Good evening. Welcome to discussions on Bhagavad Gita, May 10th. And we're continuing with the 7th chapter of the Gita. So welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for your time and your energy. We'll begin as we normally do, chanting invocation mantras to the principle of teacher in one's spiritual life, and to my specific teacher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Adamayam Dadati Swapodantikam Namayo Vishnu Padayo Krishna Prestayo Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namne Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishena Shunyavadi Paschatya Shitarine Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, thank you for joining me this evening, Wednesday, May 10th. And we're on the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. We've progressed to text. I'm going to read 16 over. I think I read it last time. But chapter 7, text 16, and we'll see how far we go with the So chapter 16, text 16 reads, O best among the Bharats, 4 kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desire of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the Absolute. So I want to just stop right there and bring to your attention the previous verse talks about 4 categories of people that do not take the spiritual life. I know the fact that you're here this evening means to some degree or another you are following a spiritual journey, your spiritual path. And the fact that another 7 billion, X amount of million are not, does not necessarily mean they that don't have spiritual path. But in general, what I'm saying is the general mass of people are preoccupied, so preoccupied with their life that spirituality at best can become just a tradition that their family has followed for generations, or it can be not on the radar screen at all as far as what is spirituality, what is spiritual life. So it was always interesting to me is what is that line that one has to cross to be in one category or the other, either interested in pursuing your spirituality or not interested at all. So these 2 verses gives us an indication, text 15, of those who do not take to a spiritual path, and text 16, those who do take to a spiritual path. So 15, kind of strong words. Prabhupada translates this rather strongly in terms of who are those that are not interested. And what we keep in mind that what our discussion centered on the last couple of verses was the modes of material nature, the gunas, and how the gunas, which are part of prakriti or the material energy, the influences that the material energy has on the consciousness of the jiva or the soul. So when those influences are there, if they're strong and dark, it's called tamagun. That means it's loosely translated to mean ignorance or not caring about anything other than the interest of the senses interacting with the sense object. And even in doing so, there's bewilderment in that. And then, so the tamagun, and then rajagun, or the mode of passion, and that's kind of like the doingness, the creativity, action, which produces stress. Whenever there's action, it's not bad to be active, but when we're so active that we're distracted, and that action is the source of our anxiety or our stress, that is usually indication that it's the strong influence of Rajagun pressing on us. And then the last one is Sattvagun, or goodness. And goodness is illumination, knowledge, happiness. And this is the environment, internal environment, necessary to understand what is being said in relationship to Prakriti and Purush, or material as opposed to spiritual, etc. So normally the average person has crafted for themselves a lifestyle that has a predominance of passion and ignorance. Everyone has a tinge of goodness there. Charitably disposed is goodness. Knowledge, a search for knowledge is goodness, etc. But in relationship to what is the tipping point of having no real interest or commitment to one spiritual path, it's predominantly the influence of the material energy in the form of its tamagun and rajagun, or ignorance and passion. Those are the qualifying factors that distract us from asking questions like, who am I? What is my purpose in being here? Like that. So Krishna outlines 4 different categories of people who have no interest in spirituality. He says here in 15, those who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature. They do not surrender unto me. They do not pursue because they are the path of spirituality, because of their immersion with the interactions of the material energy around them. And grossly foolish means that the definition here is that they may have some knowledge or some inclination, but they don't act upon it, or they reject it. Lowest among mankind means totally misusing the human form of life in such a way, naradam. In the Gita, the personality clearly states, the Godhead clearly states that there is no authority above him. So when one tries to establish oneself as the chief or primary authority, not accepting that there is an authority above us, that principle there, then that is the type of mindset which obstructs one from asking those quintessential questions of who am I, what is my purpose in life, etc. So all these things, knowledge stolen by illusion is a third category. So what does knowledge mean? People are knowledgeable. You have PhDs in different subject matters, and they've acquired a different level of knowledge, etc. However, when intelligence is infiltrated or conditioned by passion, by self-centeredness, then the intelligence cannot discern between what is spiritual, what is material, what is prakriti, what is purusha. The intelligence is used in ways to keep one shackled to the bondage of the material energy, to illusion. So that's why it's described as whose knowledge is stolen by illusion. The knowledge is there, but the illusion covers it. And then the last one is who partake in atheistic nature. Atheistic means no God, no theos. Theos is in reference, Greek, in reference to God. When you preface it with the A, it means no God. So people who deny the existence of God, they cannot fathom that there is a supreme being, a creator above and beyond us. So when they fall into those categories, those mindsets, Krishna in this particular verse says it's virtually impossible for them to understand that there is a higher goal in life than just sense gratification of the senses or of the mind. So then in the next verse, in verse 16, Krishna says, yet there are 4 categories of people who are attracted to the quest, the pursuit of spirituality. And in that he says, O best among the Bharatas, 4 kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desire of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the absolute. So one may say, distressed, how is a distressed a pious person? Because it's not the mere fact that you are distressed, it's what you do when you're distressed. It's how you respond to being under stress and in anxiety. Arjuna in the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita was stressed, because he was facing his relatives and his friends and his teachers in a battle, a monumental battle, and he knew that in this battle, in this war, he had to kill these relatives, these friends, these teachers. The culture of Arjuna is the culture of respect, so it went contrary to his very moral fiber that he had to kill these people. So he became very stressed out. That's why the first chapter of the Gita is called Vishada. Arjuna Vishada. Vishada refers to depression, lamentation, despair. So the first chapter of the Gita, very telling, is the chapter of Arjuna, who is under despair or depression or lamentation, enters into a yogic state or a state of mind which is affords one the opportunity to connect with the real nature of the self. So this it's not a question of being distressed or being in anxiety or being in depression, etc. It's what you do with it. So why is there a category of people who are under distress, they're considered pious? It's because of what they do with that situation. They either succumb to the depression or the lamentation and get overwhelmed by it and get immersed in tamagun, or the mode of ignorance, or they look for an answer, a way to break that spell of despair. So therefore, those who in a distressed condition of life choose that alternative or that option, that I'm going to use the mindset that I'm in, this mindset of being depressed or distressed, to call out, to seek out help from that person or personalities that are qualified to help me. So therefore, the category of being distressed is qualified by understanding that when you make the right choice, then this is considered the result of a pious mentality. Pious means having the tendency towards doing the right thing or doing good. The word actually for pious is sukriti. So su means good, kriti means action. So you're pious when you take whatever mindset you're in and you choose an alternative which is ultimately beneficial for you. So Krishna says here, the category of being distressed and using that as a catalyst to seek answers to your questions of life. That is considered a healthy or beneficial state of mind, and therefore they can, in such a state of mind, be privy to the knowledge that will help them to progress on their spiritual path. Next one is the desire of wealth. Again, one might say, desire of wealth, someone wants money, and that's pious, that's a sukriti. But again, it's the same thing. The desire of wealth means economic improvement, and if the person turns towards God, in relationship to, I want something, even it may be apparently self-centered, but I'm turning to God, I'm asking God, I'm petitioning God to please help me. That again is a corresponding mindset that is considered beneficial, rather than just to be absorbed in the collection of wealth, to mold your life in such a way as that you can have economic development. There's a distinction between turning to God, oh please God help me in this regard, please, Hail Mary, what's that, Our Father, I can't even remember now, it's been such a long time, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy will be done, thy will on earth as it is in heaven. Give us our daily bread. So, there's a petition there to God, to our Father, give us our daily bread. So it's not the highest platform to be on when you desire of wealth or desire of economic benefit, but you turn to God. But still, the catching point is the fact that we're including God in the equation and his help or his mercy. So whether it's stress or whether it's economic development, turning to God. Free from my stress, free from my anxious position. I'm turning to God for economic development, etc. Why? Because when we do that and we start to, by the process of connecting to God, the yogic process which helps us to connect to God, there's purification involved. So originally there may be a motive. Economic development may be a motive. To become free from stress may be a motive. But the motive becomes purified. Good example is the story in the Srimad Bhagavatam of Dhruva. Dhruva was a 5-year-old boy. He was a prince. He was the son of King Uttanapada. And Dhruva, in those days, kings had many wives, or at least a few wives, etc. So Dhruva was the son of King Uttanapada's second wife. So he was more or less considered a little lower down the chain than the son of the first wife. And the first wife was quite arrogant about her position. So when Dhruva wanted the attention of his father, the first wife, the primary wife, she wouldn't allow it. She just said, you're lower down the ladder, and if you really want to be in favorable position to gain your father's attention, you have to take birth in my womb. Thus was the arrogance. So Dhruva was a Kshatriya. He was a warrior. Even he was a young boy, he was a Kshatriya, a warrior of the warrior class of men. And he became angry by that, frustrated and angered by that attitude, and he turned towards his mother. And his mother said, yeah, only God can help you in this regard. So if you take shelter, then whatever you want, God can give it to you. So Dhruva went out with the motivation of having a kingdom greater than his father's. And even at the tender age of 5 years old, he ventured to the jungle and he performed yoga, a very intense yoga. And over the course of time, he did this for months and months. And his yoga became more and more serious and more severe. And so he was able to conquer the senses, because one of the primary goals of the yoga process is to conquer the senses, and also to purify the mind. If that is not part of the equation in your yoga practice, then the question is, are you practicing yoga or are you doing exercise? So in Dhruva's case, he went out, he had a motive, he performed yoga, and he earned, by the performances, his austerities, he obtained the association of a very saintly personality named Narad Muni. Narad Muni told him that if you really want to achieve your goal, then you must attain the association of the Supreme Lord. And here is a mantra that you must chant. And many of you probably heard this mantra, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. He gave him that mantra. So in addition to the austerities that he was performing in the Ashtanga Yoga process, he was chanting this Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya mantra. And by virtue of that, by virtue of the potency of that mantra and the purification to his heart, what does purification mean? It means that it elevates consciousness beyond Tama and Rajagun, the influences of passion and ignorance, and firmly situates the mind in sattva gun. And in that state of mind, one can meditate. That's why Patanjali says yogas chitta vritti nirodha. When you achieve nirodha, calmness or peaceful state of mind, a sattvic mind, then you can enter into a state of meditation. So that's what happened with Dhruva. Dhruva chanted this mantra. After a period of time, he achieved the darshan of the Supreme Personality of God in himself, Lord Narayan, and this way they had dialogue. When he saw face to face, he came in contact, in connection with the beauty of the Supreme. Then his heart was completely cleansed, and he realized at that point, at that juncture, at the point of realization, he realized that his motivation for performing yoga to gain something, to gain a kingdom greater than his father's, was really not the true goal of yoga. He had that realization, and he used a comparison. He said that if I was to obtain that, that would be like having baubles of glass. You know, when you see costume jewelry, they may look like rubies or emeralds or sapphires or diamonds, but they're really glass, colored glass. So Dhruva used that comparison. Oh, I'm trying to achieve something great. Just like one of the definitions of yoga that I like is that is a system or discipline which affords humanity the opportunity to achieve the highest goal of life. So from Dhruva's initial perspective, his highest goal that he could achieve by performance of yoga was a kingdom greater than his father's. But then once he became purified, he realized that's temporary. And that as my goal is part of the illusion, the grand illusion. So the purification that came from chanting Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, then that allowed him to see, once he had darshan of the Supreme, it allowed him to see that this is really the real jewel in life. To reconnect in my loving relationship with the Supreme, because that is eternal. That is fulfilling. The happiness which will come from a kingdom is temporary, and it's also accompanied by a lot of stress. Sukham idukam. There's happiness, there's distress when one acquires, when one has material acquisition. But when one connects in a loving relationship with the Supreme, as Dhruva did, he saw that there's nothing greater, there's nothing higher. That is the ultimate goal of life. So, the definition, a system or a discipline which affords humanity the opportunity to achieve the highest goal, the ultimate goal, it all depends where you're at, how much conditioned you are at, which will determine what is your highest goal. If you want a healthy body, then, and that's your highest goal, then you'll perform yoga and you'll get a healthy body. But if you see that the body is a yantra rudhani maya, it's a machine made of material energy which I am temporarily inhabiting. If the state of practicing yoga purifies the mind to see the temporality of this body. So even that, I mean, certainly it is wise to be healthy, because no matter what you want to do in life, you can do it best if you're taking care of your responsibility, and that's the body. So that is certainly not to be poo-pooed. But to use a healthy body and a healthy mind to enter into a deep state of meditation on the Supreme as my object of meditation or goal of my meditation, that is considered the ultimate goal, because it gives us connection with our eternal reality, our eternal state of being, which is Sat Chit Ananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. So that's a very important thing to note. So the Dhruva story gives us an understanding that if you want something economic development, or you want to be free from your stress, you want peace, and you are doing it through service to the Supreme, Bhakti Yoga, then eventually you will obtain that, but you will also obtain a purified mind to see that that's not the real goal of life. And then what is the third category of piety? That will put one in the frame of mind to understand that there is this the necessity for pursuit of spirituality. It's called the curious. People who look at the world and they're curious about the world. Usually that's an indication of intelligence. When someone's looking and questions, my teacher would often say, a child who is asking questions, my son is constantly asking questions, because it's a symptom of intelligence. And when we have perception of things, and it sparks inquiry into the nature of things, then that's a symptom of intelligence. So the curious is also considered, when we use that curiosity in such a way that it serves also as a catalyst to pursue our spirituality, then that is sukriti, that is good action, that is a good mindset, Krishna is saying here, to be in. And then the fourth category of piety is knowledge, pursuit of knowledge. Because pursuit of knowledge allows us to see the distinction between matter and spirit. That's the preliminary quality or category of knowledge. One who is obtaining knowledge is the understanding of the distinction between matter and spirit. Then on that note, what does Krishna say in 17? Of these, the one who is in full knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best. For I am very dear to him, and he is dear to me. So what does Krishna say? Of these four categories of pious, the one who is in full knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service. So what does he mean by full knowledge? He means, yes, you have to be in a state of mind that understands the distinction between matter and spirit. But even beyond that, then what is the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal duty, the eternal responsibility of the soul? Not only that the soul is spirit by nature, spirit as distinct from prakriti or matter, but also what is the natural inclination of the spirit soul, and that is to serve, to engage in a process by which we can reconnect to the Supreme. So Krishna says, of those four categories of piety, the category of knowledge, pursuing knowledge, is considered the highest. 18. All of these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and most perfect goal. So, just to bring it back to what we discussed in previous classes, that there are different aspects or perspectives of the Supreme Reality, which includes Brahman, Paramatma, the divinity within the heart. Brahman is the underlying spiritual constitution of all life, or Bhagavan, the Supreme Person. Now, the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, in that regard, they only accept that there is a personality, God the Father, God the Almighty, God the All-Merciful, God the All-Powerful, etc. According to the yogic paradigm, God also has two other aspects, two other manifestations that you can actually come in contact with. And why does Krishna keep going back to the fact that, Bhakti is the most complete union with me, the Bhagavan or the personality is most complete? Because if one practices Jnana Yoga and has realization of Brahman, or the underlying spiritual principle of all life, there is a non-acceptance or a denial that there is a personality of Brahman, both within the heart, the Paramatma, and Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of God, and one denies that and only accepts Brahman, and everything else is considered illusion. So that's why in Gita and in the commentaries by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, you'll see that many times referred to, that Bhakti being more complete, and which is verified by Krishna in the 6th chapter, the 47th verse of the Bhagavad Gita, where he actually answers Arjuna's question. Krishna says, my opinion is Bhakti is the most complete. Why? Because you have union with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And what does that mean? That means, according to that Bhakti Yoga perspective, Brahman emanates from the body of the Supreme. Paramatma is an expansion of the Supreme. Come into this world and enter into the heart of all living entities and provides knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So that is why it's considered in many occasions to be the most complete. And that's what Krishna is saying here on a number of occasions, that it is considered the most complete. So in this regard, does anyone have any question? Anyone want to stop me and ask a pressing question? If not, I'll continue. Anyone there? Is that a hand there? I see a hand, okay. I don't see a name though. Just put on your mic and ask your question. Where the hand is here. Oh, that's not the hand. Okay, I thought there was a hand there. Sorry. Okay, if there's no questions at that point, I just wanted to make another point in this regard. When we say that there is a mindset, 4 categories of mindset, which prevents one from understanding or embarking on their spiritual journey, that is also mentioned in other chapters in the Bhagavad Gita. There's a verse, I believe it's the 2nd chapter, Bhogaishwarya Prashaktanam Toya Parita Chetasam, that if one is attached to acquisition of opulence and sense enjoyment, then one cannot have the ability to understand one's relationship with the Supreme. There's another verse in the 7th chapter, we're going to come to it soon, Naham Prakasha Sarvasha, I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them I am covered by my internal energy, my internal potency. So Krishna gives several references before this, the 7th chapter, and after the 7th chapter. Another thing he says in the 9th chapter is Avajananti Mang Mudha. That means that fools deride me when I descend to the world in a human-like form. They just think I'm a great historical personality, but they don't understand me as I am. So this indicates that on either side of the coin, either side of the fence, where you're impious and unable to see, it's because of the path that you are choosing. It's according to how you are prioritizing your life. Because what Krishna has said previous to this chapter and after this chapter is, you can enter into an understanding of the Supreme by my grace, by Krishna's grace. Krishna gives the ability by which you can understand. It's very, I use this analogy, sometimes it's very similar to you and relationships that you develop. You have the ability to open yourself up to another person or not. And to the degree that you open up to another person, that is the degree that the person is going to understand you. And to the degree that you do not open up to that person, that is the degree the person is not going to understand you. So it's an analogy to understand that how we prioritize our life, what are our commitments, how serious we are, how sincere we are in terms of our practice, our spiritual practice. This creates a dynamic between the Supreme and ourselves. And what does that mean? When we create the dynamic of being sincere, being honest, being open, wanting to know the truth, not clinging, to our attachments, but willing to reevaluate, reassess our lives in such a way to reprioritize the time that we have left. I mean, I have to say, I think about this every day, and I know, some of my friends out there, Joe Gennaro, he and I have had conversations about, our age and how we assess how we're using our time and what priorities we should create in our lives. I mean, one who's young and has come to that conclusion, that is a greatly advanced person. But certainly as we get older, it makes sense, doesn't it, to if we have the inclination towards spirituality, it makes sense to reevaluate, how we are spending our time and our energy and our resources, what we are doing with that, so that we can close the chapter in our life in an enlightened state of mind. So, Krishna is saying here, if you have this kind of attached mindset, you're attached to opulence, you're attached to sense gratification, you're making that as a priority of your life, then you won't be able to understand me. But on the other hand, if you're willing to give up those attachments, or at least dovetail the energy that you're putting forth. Example, what I mean dovetailing. Everyone likes to eat, right? There's not one of us who doesn't like to eat, and certainly to eat palatable foods is nice. It's a nice thing to do. So if we actually cultivate a mindset of gratitude, that everything that I am eating, anything that's coming within my grasp, if I first acknowledge the fact that this is coming by God's grace, then that is doing what you normally do on a day-to-day basis, but having the mindfulness and taking the time to actually be grateful and demonstrate actively your gratitude by making a very simple offering to God before you eat, saying thank you, what you've given, this is to you, in demonstration of my gratitude. So this is a very important thing to consider, in terms of our life. We have to come to the junction in our life where we make some hard choices, where we start prioritizing what time we have left in such a way that we can rapidly advance along our path. And what happens is there is a deep sense of fulfillment when we start to align ourselves in that way, whether we're young, middle-aged, or old, and we make that endeavor. There's a deep sense of fulfillment that happens as a result, which is proof. It's a kind of a practical demonstration that you are reconnecting. This deep sense of fulfillment is the direct result of creating priorities and commitments in one's life that is for your ultimate benefit, for your spiritual progress. It's tangible. And it actually is provides the inspiration to continue with that pattern of behavior. So we have to seek the tattva. Tattva means, loosely translated, means truth. What is the tattva? The truth of life, the truth of being. And tattva, literally translated, means thatness. Thatness. It means, what are we? Who are we? Aham brahmasmi. The thatness, the reality that my nature, my true nature is Brahman, Sat Chit Ananda. So we have one of the symptoms that we're prioritizing our life in such a way as we're seeking the tattva, the truth of life, the truth of reality. What is reality as opposed to what is illusion? We have to make a distinction between what is mirage and what is reality. What are the various manifestations of illusion in our life that is keeping us shackled to the grand illusion that we are our bodies, we are our minds, that the vrittis or the thoughts are us, when in actuality they're the result of sensory interaction with the sense objects. We have to keep that all in mind. So thatness, we have to come in contact with thatness. Okay, let me continue here. What time is it here? 7:48. Okay. Yeah, so we're on 19. After many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. And Krishna, this is a reiteration of the point, I believe it's in the beginning of the 7th chapter. Out of many different types of people, one who takes to the path of fatness or truth, that's a very rare person. And of all those people who do that, the person who comes to reconnect or develop their union with me, Krishna, the Supreme, that's a very, very rare soul. So here Krishna is saying, many, many births. He's confirming the fact that the soul is eternal and has had many births and will take many births, as many that is necessary to create the evolution, the final stage of evolution, which is yoga, connection, to become yuktva, or connected with the supreme truth, and to be living in a state of consciousness which is thoroughly connected to the ultimate reality. Such a great soul is very rare. Text 20. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires. So again, Krishna is making the point that if you lend your intelligence, your mind, your senses to the pursuit of gratification, then it's stolen by illusion. We're unable to see that thatness, the reality, what is it that is existence as opposed to living the illusion. What is existence? What is beingness rather than doingness? We get caught up in doingness, doing this, doing that, all in pursuit of gratification. Beingness means living in a mind full of understanding and connection with the Supreme. So that anything that we do and everything that we do ends up, there is a connected link to it. Gardening. You can garden. How many of you like to garden? You can garden. You grow flowers. Yeah, Celia, you like to garden. You grow flowers. What is more beautiful, right, than a blossoming rose or blossoming gardenia or jasmine or any one of a number of different blossoms? What is the connective link? You see that beauty, that fragrance, that color. You see that all is a gift of the divine, the gift of the Supreme. And how do you recognize that? How do you make a conscious recognition of that? That flower is offered. Like we have an altar here to our forms of Krishna, and we have lots. We bought a house, and now we're doing an extensive. Not we. I shouldn't even put the we in there. My wife is doing an extensive amount of gardening, so we have a lot of things blossoming now. Every day, there are so many different types of flowers and fragrances which are being offered out of gratitude. It's that overwhelming sense of, oh, thank you. Oh, thank you for the ability to come in contact with this beauty on a daily basis, because this beauty is none other than an extension of your beauty. So whether you're gardening, or whether you're cooking, or whether you're in a relationship, or whether whatever you're doing, Krishna says that. Yat karoshi, yat ashnasi, yat jahoshi dadasi, yat tapasyasya kontiya, mat karusha madarpana. That all that you do, all that you offer, all that you give away in charity, as well as all austerities that you may perform, Krishna says, just do that as an offering to me. See, this is why we're in the bhakti section right now. We're getting reminders constantly. If you don't connect, if you don't make the endeavor to connect to me, then you kind of drift further and further into the illusion. But you make the endeavor to connect to me, your actions, your mindset, then you drift further and further into clarity, and your head gets above. What does transcend mean? It means to rise above. The direct result is you rise above the influence of the modes of material nature, and you begin to feel it's tangible. Spiritual progression, spiritual evolution is a tangible experience, and it's exactly what provides inspiration, desire for good association, advanced association, the willingness to perform yoga, Bhakti Yoga, which is on a regular basis. It's called sadhana, the willingness to do that, to take time out of your life to do that, and to make the endeavor to cleanse the heart from all misconceptions, misunderstandings, and illusions. This is desire. We have a strong desire to recognize one of the subtlest elements. Remember in the 7th chapter, or who remembers in the early part of the 7th chapter, where Krishna describes the 8 elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. Earth, water, fire, air, ether. So the 5 gross elements, three subtle elements of mind, intelligence, and ego, false ego. So one of the inspirations that comes by seriously devoting yourself to a spiritual path is that you want to become free from the false ego. A friend of mine wrote an article, and I took this out of his article. He defines false ego. False ego, ahankara, is the subtle element. So this is directly in connection to what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. There are 8 elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. It's the subtle element that fosters the illusion that we are the material body. So it's kind of like putting on glasses, colored glasses. If you put on colored glasses, what do you see? You see according to the color of that glass. Is that not is that reality? It's not reality. It's due to the fact that you've put on colored glass. So the false ego is having a perception which is based on the illusion and the attachment to the fact that we're our body. I am my body, and I should do everything, all my action in service to the bodily and mental demands. So again, I'll read his definition. False ego is the subtle element that fosters the illusion that we are the material body, symptomized by the mind's desire to enjoy, control, and the feeling of superiority. So that subtle element, which is part of Prakriti, which is part of the 8 elements of the material energy that we are in. When we're in this body, that means we are in a yantra, a machine made of these 8 material elements. So the subtle element, which kind of provides the colored glass over our perception, that's called false ego. And false ego literally means misidentification. We are misidentifying the body and the mind as who we really are, when in fact the yoga system connects us to who we actually are, and that is Purusha, or the spiritual, the awareness, that which gives consciousness to those 8 elements. Without that factor, those 8 elements are simply that. They're elements. And they have no real function. Their functionality takes place when it is infused with the consciousness which comes from the Purush, the soul, the Atma. So if we are covered, if our perception is covered by false ego, then we see everything in relationship to the illusion. So that's why yoga, Bhakti Yoga in particular, service to the Supreme, is a practice of reconnecting with our true nature and utilizing that nature in service to the Supreme. That's basically the definition of what bhakti is. I'll stop here. This is, let me make sure I have the verse where we stopped. And I open up the floor for anyone's comments or questions, observations, realizations. If you would like to say something, please hit the unmute button. Anyone? Participant center. no one would like to share with us any realization, any questions or comments? Don't be shy. No? Okay. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. It was a pleasure being with you, spending this hour with you, meditating on the Bhagavad Gita. Remember that the four aspects of knowledge from the Vedic paradigm is to hear, which you did tonight. You lent me your ears for an hour. The second part is reflection. So you take this home with you and reflect upon it. And then anything that spurs you on, causes a little inspiration or a little clarity, try to assimilate it into your life. And then talk about it. Talk about it with others. Share
Hare
whatever.
Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Dandapra. I'm so sorry. I when you said you have questions, I said yes, I want to say something.
Okay.
You were mentioning about taking bhakti, and you don't have to wait till you're older. Like you were mentioning that you're with your friend, you guys were discussing about your life and where you're at and everything. And I see a lot of people in our life that they're young, so they don't want to even inquire. They're just happy with what they're doing, going out and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So it's like, this is kind of crazy. This is where people are. Wow.
But it's, that's the strength of youth. You have a strong body, strong sense desires, and that's really the mode of passion life. And it's hard to break away from that unless you've been particularly graced with suffering. Fortunately, there is within our involvement with the material elements, we all know that suffering is not necessarily age related, that there are people who go through a lot of suffering at a very early age, and you talk to them about their childhood and it wasn't pleasant. So actually Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says when one is particularly favored by the Lord, then they will suffer, and things are taken away. We're riding high when things are flowing in our direction. We're riding very high. But when things are taken away, then it really puts a stop to that passionate flow, that flow force, which is pushing and pushing and pushing. And quite naturally, if you know nothing else, what do you turn to? If there is no education, if you haven't had the good fortune as a young person to come in contact with a spiritual person who wins, who attracts your attention, or if you haven't had some suffering or trauma in your life, then it's not what's going to be the catalyst at a young age. Certainly the catalyst at an old age is, hey, this body is breaking down. We can't shake the reality. You look in the mirror, you can't shake the reality. You get up in the morning and your joints are stiff. I can't wait to get up in the morning so I can loosen my joints, my knees, and especially my knees after the operation and everything are particularly stiff at night. I don't even like sleeping anymore because the stiffness and the pain that comes from the stiffness and all that. I can't wait to get up and start moving around, and then so all these realities that set, you can't shake. People try really hard, they really try hard to counteract the influences of time, But does it really work? All the endeavor to counteract the influences of time on the body, on the mind, does it really work? Does it really make one's life less stressful? Does it make a person less anxious? Because fulfillment must be there. Yeah, so, it's the curse of youth and the blessing of youth. Curse of youth is the strong illusion that I can really enjoy. The blessing of youth is that I have this energy. If I use this energy in in a positive way, it can help me very rapidly advance along my path. Yeah. Thank you, Ishwari. Thank you for that comment. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Prabhu, for this discussion. You're always encouraging us to, contemplate and really think about all these topics, because it's very, very important. And I find it in my life as I go through. I'm like, oh my God, so many people out there are not, well, like you said in chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita, how 4 kinds of people come surrender to him. And when we all see each other and we know, our background, and we're like, oh wow, this is a very big blessing that we are in this consciousness.
Yeah, and one of the blessings is Sangha. It's one of the biggest blessings that a person who wants to pursue spirituality. I was just having a discussion with a friend of mine about this very topic of the importance of having good association which nourishes the desire to progress along my path. And beyond Sangha, the association is community. If we're fortunate enough to be situated as such where we can actually have a regular community to participate with, it really serves to build faith, to spark inspiration, and help us along our path. So these are all one of the 5 powerful limbs that Rupa Goswami mentions in terms of cultivating bhakti is Sangha, is association. So that's why I'm so grateful to all of you for giving me your Sangha every Wednesday night. So for an hour we can think deeply about this subject matter and take it with us, for the rest of the week. So, okay. Again, I appreciate your time and your energy and your association. Until next week, 17th, we'll continue finishing the 7th chapter. So if you haven't read the completion of the 7th chapter, please do so. And hopefully we'll be able to make some good progress. So, until then, namaste.
Namaste.
Hare Krishna. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Laksmi.
Hare Haribo.